I'm happy again to have this 40 minutes to spend this time together with you. And the topic which I didn't choose, but it was somehow in the air, was to talk about artificial intelligence and quantum intelligence, consciousness, and the information field. Because the world is really changing a lot. This revolution which we are experiencing by the introduction of artificial intelligence is compared to the Industrial Revolution. It is compared to the discovery of the fire, which was a game changer for the human being, also for the evolution of the human being. This was a game changer. And so many future researchers and visionaries of society, science and technology, they consider the development of AI and the introduction, the broad introduction into society, into all areas of society, as a milestone in the evolution of the human mind, culture, and civilization. We heard yesterday that Bill Gates said in 10 years there will be no more doctors, no more teachers. So many jobs will be taken over by artificial intelligence, and it's already since the 90s that the computers play better chess than the humans. Garry Kasparov lost against Deep Blue from IBM. This was a major challenge. And when I heard this, I stopped playing chess. I said, if the computers are better than me, I'm not inspired anymore to play chess. So in the same way, we as human beings have to ask ourselves, and what is our value? If the machines, if the computers can do almost everything better than us, what is really our role? And this will be the most important question of the next decades. We have to redefine the dignity of the humanity, of life, comparing us to the machines, and in many cases it will be very difficult to distinguish between which intelligence is a natural intelligence, is a human being, and which is a artificial intelligence. Like many voices, like the voices in our movie which we saw yesterday, the English voice is an AI. And many pictures and movies are performed by AIs. The new Pope, and I was very happy to see the new Pope elected after the old Pope passed away. He chose his name, Leo XIV, according to this idea that Leo XIII was the Pope who developed the social theory of the Catholic Church while the Industrial Revolution. So the Church, the spiritual movements in the world, they have to give answers, and people will expect to get answers by the spiritual leaders of society. And we in TimeWaver also consider ourselves to be a spiritual movement, to give answers to the burning questions of humanity, especially about the meaning of life. We had last year's convention. I saw some people still walking around with the small blue bags. You remember the small blue cotton bags here? Wonderful. With this nice picture where you have this chaotic, this chaotic line going over into a Tesla coil and creating order from chaos. The meaning of life is to give life meaning. This is such a profound sentence. The meaning of life is to give life meaning. You might say, no, but there is meaning. It just has to be discovered. No, we are a meaning giver. This is the meaning of our life, to give life meaning. It sounds so simple. It sounds almost reductionary. You know what I want to say better than me. So the meaning of life is to give life meaning. And this is the ability of the Spirit to create meaning. And this is how we also perceive when Spirit acts in this material world, when we suddenly discover meaning. This is the influence of the information field. Information field connects different events which seem random by meaning. And you see how the different seemingly random events in this world, and this world is just a collection of, it's just a synthesis, it's just a symphony of events which are happening. Reality is events, is a dynamic reality. And these events are connected by a meaning. They are telling a story. There is a narrative. This is a narrative. It's a story told by God to the human beings. This is what we experience of life as life. So information field creates meaning. And by working in the information field, we are discovering the meaning. If something happens to someone, a conflict, a disease, an accident, something disturbing in his life, there's always a question, what does it mean? To discover the hidden meaning behind is, in many cases, already a step towards healing. Because if you understand the meaning, if you understand your life as meaningful, this is an expression of a holistic health. The WHO has discussed a definition of spiritual health, which was to experience one's own life as holistically meaningful. Because meaning will connect all the different aspects of your life, your relationships, your business, your health, your children, your parents, everything connected in a meaningful context. This is what we want. We want to live a meaningful life. And meaning is giving the power also to live. If we experience meaning, if we experience our life as meaningful, we survive. This was the discovery of Viktor Frankl when he was imprisoned in the concentration camp of Auschwitz and later in 2 other concentration camps. He survived a few years of very intense torture in the concentration camps. And he saw that those people who lost the sense of meaning, and you could see it in their face, you could see it by them stopping shaving. He saw if someone stops shaving, why didn't he shave for the day? Because he thought it doesn't matter anyway. If you think it doesn't matter anyway, you don't have power. And the sense of meaning, it's a connection to a level higher in the X5 axis. And here I'm introducing a term from the theory of Burkhard Heim. Burkhard Heim has been mentioned yesterday by David in his wonderful lecture. Otherwise, we didn't speak a lot about him. And I want to speak about Burkhard Heim's model today. Burkhard Heim passed away in 2001. And I got to know him quite lately in his life, which was 1998. I had published that time in a magazine called Magazine 2000, which is not existing anymore, a paper in two papers, connected papers, where I described in an easy, understandable way the theory of Burkhard Heim. And he got these 2 papers and he read them and he decided to contact me because he found that this was a description, and he told me when he phoned me first time that he made 30 copies of this paper and distributed it to many people around. And his daughter his granddaughter came to him and said, "Grandpa, now I understand what you were talking about all these years." So this was a big compliment for me, and our relationship started that time, and I visited him a few times at his home close to Göttingen, and we had wonderful conversations. And I asked him, because you remember David yesterday showed the 12-dimensional model of the unified field theory. There's 4 dimensions of space and time, which is our physical reality on the one side, and there is 4 dimensions which Burkhard Heim called the G4. G4, which is kind of the spiritual dimension. And in between there is 2 levels. One is S2 and one is I2. S2 is the energetic control space, and I2 is the information space. So there is 4 dimensions in between the physical and the spiritual dimension, which translate from one dimension to the other, from the spiritual to the material. And this is what we call the information field. This information field has 2 sides. One is the lower dimensions, 5th and 6th dimension, and one is the higher dimension, 7th and 8th. And the 5th and 6th dimension is energetic. And the 7th and 8th dimension is informational. And here, in energy and information, in a dynamic way, they are working together to translate the spiritual to the material and the material to the spiritual. This is the answer for the big question: how does consciousness, the spiritual, and matter, the material, how do they interact? They interact through the information field and the energetic processes of the information field. So what are these energetic processes of the information field? I asked this question to the AI, which I fed with all the works of Burkhard Heim. So I created in Google Notebook, you can upload up to 50 references, and I loaded up a few dozen documents with the work of Burkhard Heim in the sweet German language. It doesn't exist in English language, unfortunately, but for AI this is not a problem. You can choose the language and you immediately have a good translation. That's a good thing. So, and now I have an AI. Whenever I have a question to Burkhard Heim, I can ask this question and I get a very clear answer. The answers are quite lengthy, but then you can ask the AI to comprehend it and get a more clear answer. And in this way, now I can communicate with Burkhard Heim because he has written so much. And I didn't only upload the books of Burkhard Heim, but also books about Burkhard Heim, like from Illoband from Ludwiger, which describes the lives and the teachings and the theory of Burkhard Heim. So this is very, very interesting. And I will give you a little insight to this soon. Why do I mention Burkhard Heim in the context of artificial intelligence and quantum intelligence? We have an idea what is artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence, in the first place, is something really amazing because it gives to everyone the access to the global knowledge of humanity. And this is absolutely amazing and unique. Before, you had to go to the library and read those books which you select. And how many books can you read? That's difficult. And you read 1,000 books, and from this, a normal intellectual reads 1,000 books, and from this 1,000 books, he creates one new book and comprehends all this. And then you have to read 1,000 books which comprehend 1,000 books. So by reading a lot, you can get access to the knowledge of humanity, but it will always be very partial. But now we have a machine learning device and intelligence which can access all knowledge of humanity. And this will improve. What we have now is nothing to compare what we will have in a year or in 2 years. It will improve. So this is a great benefit which we can get. So we only have to ask the right questions. It's all about asking the right questions and getting the answers from this comprehensive knowledge of humanity. So this is a great benefit. And this is very parallel to what we are doing with TimeWaver, with our work in the information field, which is based on quantum intelligence or consciousness intelligence. The intelligence of the information field also gives us access to the global knowledge behind humanity. So both institutions, artificial intelligence and information field or quantum intelligence, give us access to a global knowledge, but one is still deterministic. The artificial intelligence is depending on what is published And from the same sources, it will always create the same information. It's not static because it's evolving, but at a certain moment, it's always static. It's a deterministic institution. But the quantum intelligence is not deterministic. It looks to the deepest level. It looks to the invisible level. It deeply takes its information from the G4. And the G4 is a spiritual level behind everything what happens. According to Burkhard Heim, in the G4, you find the blueprints of the events of this world. On the one side, you find the blueprints of the dynamic succession of events which are happening. On the other side, you find the blueprints also of the living entities. So each species has a blueprint in the G4, like the human species has a blueprint in the information field on the level of G4. And through the transformation, through the information field, to the material level, these blueprints materialize into the shapes, into the morphology of biology. So if we are in a challenged health, we have to reconnect to this blueprint. And TimeWaver helps us to reconnect to the blueprint in the G4. When I asked Burkhard Heim, why do you call it G4? He answered in a very surprising way, because only God knows what is inside, happening inside. So the G is chosen specifically for God. It's the 4 God dimensions. And I asked him, how do these processes look like in the G4? And he said, it's very difficult to get a glance into G4. You can have a glance by meditation. And Burkhard Heim, he could, when I met him, he was blind. He could hardly hear anymore. Because I don't want to take too much from his life now, because I will give you an insight into what the artificial intelligence chose from his life to present to you today. But he couldn't see, he could hardly hear, so he was naturally drawn inside. His attention was drawn inside. And this is what he also told me made the big difference in his life. When he had this accident when he was 16 years in a laboratory, and he lost his arms, he lost his almost his sight and his ability to hear was strongly reduced. This changed his life completely, and he started to observe inside. So he was only able to develop this 12-dimensional theory because he had an inside view of the higher reality. So he told me, but his view into the G4 is mainly through mathematics. This mathematics he developed himself because it didn't exist. It was a special type of multi-dimensional Fourier transformations. And those of you who are a little technical-minded or study mathematics or physics or technology, they know what is a Fourier transformation. It translates from one realm to the other. It translates to the realm of frequencies. It creates a frequency spectrum. So the multi-dimensional Fourier transformations from the G4 translate the content of the G4 into a spectrum of frequencies. And this is the very importance of the frequencies in this life, in this world. Everything is controlled by frequencies. So the term which I used many times, that frequencies are the language of the information field, is directly derived from the model of Burkhard Heim. Because to have a look into the G4, you have to look at the spectrum of frequencies which you get by this multidimensional Fourier transformations, which are happening when the G4 transforms down to the I2, to the S2, to the 4-dimensional space. and it appears as spectra of frequencies in this world. Like Hans Gesing and Dirk Meyer, two researchers from the Netherlands, have discovered and published a lot, and we had Hans Gesing speaking at our conference on coherence in the castle 2 years ago. They discovered that the quantum vacuum has a set of resonance frequencies. The quantum vacuum has a set of coherent resonance frequencies which actually transform the energy from the quantum vacuum down to the material level. And these frequencies can be calculated. In Healy, we have created a program called Coherence. Do we have it available for the TimeWaver frequency users? You're silent, so probably not. No? No? So you have to get it. We have to make it available. You have it? For TimeWaver frequency? Yes? We have it? Yes. You should, if you have it but you don't use, it doesn't make sense. So you have to look if you have it. If you don't have it, complain for it. It's such an important program called Coherence. The people in Healy, they love it. They come together sometimes, thousands of people in online events, and together meditate and play the program Coherence, because it consists of this resonance frequencies of the quantum vacuum. So this is a part of the spectrum of frequencies by which the quantum vacuum, and the quantum vacuum is the outer surface of the information field. The information field communicates through different levels. It's a G4, which is on a high spiritual level. And then it gets down. And the quantum level is, the quantum vacuum is the level of the lowest possible energy of the states of the physical reality. This is the quantum vacuum. So the quantum vacuum is the surface of the information field towards the material energy. And it communicates through frequencies. So frequencies, again, have to be embodied. How to embody frequencies? The most powerful way to embody frequencies is through the electrical field. Like yesterday, we have heard from Professor Rack. He was quoting Nikola Tesla, who said that the first manifestation of spirit is electricity, bioelectricity. Today we will have a lecture of Schmieke about bioelectricity later in the afternoon, and we made it really a research project in TimeWaver and Healy to look deeply into the level of bioelectricity. There is a lot of research going on internationally on bioelectricity. There is an amazing researcher. I follow him on X. His name is Michael Levine. He's at the Tufts University, and he has 50 researchers in his team just looking into the effect of bioelectricity in the body. And he is of this opinion that the bioelectrical field is a holistic field which connects to the morphogenetic field behind, to the information field. So the information field embodies in our system, in our body, it embodies through the bioelectrical field. And bioelectric means it's an electrical field, but it's a holistic field. It's ruled by quantum processes. And these quantum processes are always have a certain frequency. Each quantum process has a certain frequency. So Michael Levine, in a very visionary paper, which is a long paper and complicated to read, but I asked the AI to comprehend it into a short paragraph. He says that he imagines the healthcare system of the future, the medicine of the future, he imagines to be a device which through bioelectrical signal creates coherence in the bioelectrical field. He imagines a device which through frequencies, through bioelectrical frequencies, actually controls the communication of cells. And when I saw this, I said, oh, we are working on this line. We have created such a device with the TimeWaver frequency, which actually being guided by the information field, by the quantum intelligence of the information field, connecting to the G4, connecting to the blueprint of a healthy life, connecting to this level creates frequencies which guide our bioelectrical system towards coherence. We call it harmonizing the bioenergetic field. But the bioenergetic field and the bioelectrical field are synonymous. So that's the power of frequencies, and we have it in our hand. TimeWaver frequencies translates the information field into frequencies which act in your bioelectrical field and which have the goal to harmonize all the different events in your system towards a coherent, holistic life, a coherent, meaningful, holistic life. So this is a really interesting answer which I got from Burkhard Heim from the information field, and not from the information field, from the AI, which I use to communicate with Burkhard Heim's knowledge nowadays. So he said, through this multidimensional Fourier transformation, he had a glance into the G4. And what he saw there is holistically symmetric intelligences which create order. Holistically symmetric intelligences. So it's ruled by universal symmetries which act in an intelligent way. He calls them P+, persona. So there are centers of intelligence, of holistically symmetrical intelligence in the G4, and he calls them persona. These are the centers of the living entities. There is a global, holistic symmetry intelligence which we can only call God, and there is the individual holistic intelligences, which are we can call them souls. And this holistically symmetric intelligences act through the frequencies into the four-dimensional world. So this is what I would call the real quantum intelligence. It's a symmetric universal intelligences in the G4 which we can contact through our work with TimeWaver. And now I want to give you something which our technicians struggled for. I want to give you a small comprehension of the AI, which transformed it very much down to the level which we can understand, because Burkhard Heim is very complex, about Burkhard Heim's life and also of his teachings. It's 8 minutes, so we can listen to it now.
Mm-hmm. Forget endless reading. We're here to bring you the insights that truly matter, often with a twist or two.
Yeah.
You've certainly given us a unique challenge this time, a real treasure trove of information, and we can't wait to get into it for you.
Absolutely. This deep dive ventures into some pretty extraordinary territory. We have a collection of scientific papers, like Heimberliner Fortray, Menschent Welt, and several others looking at Burkhard Heim's unified field theory, his work on Elementarstrukturen der Materie.
Right.
And alongside those, we've got Hillebrand von Ludwiger's biography, Burkhard Heim, Das Leben eines vergessenen Genies, which gives a much more personal angle. Mm-hmm. And there's also a paper by Sienkiewicz exploring possible links between Heim's ideas and parapsychology.
Okay, so our mission seems clear then. Mm-hmm. Understand the core ideas, the pillars of Burkhard Heim's ambitious theories, and the really remarkable, sometimes turbulent, context around how they were developed. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Get to know the man a bit.
Burkhard Heim's early life, which is really well documented in the biography, it kind of lays a crucial foundation for understanding his later work.
Right.
His fascination with rocketry and just experimenting, it started really early on. There's this mention of Satanseer.
Satanseer.
Yeah, these vivid red things he made, they'd harden and then just explode with a surprisingly loud bang, almost like a really powerful firecracker. So this early inventiveness, it gives us a glimpse, into his curious experimental mind right from the start.
And that inventive spirit sometimes got him into trouble, didn't it? He was expelled from school for sabotage.
Yeah, exactly. That must have been a huge disruption for, well, a bright kid.
Definitely.
The biography talks about his parents being really concerned, obviously, and struggling to find him a new school. He eventually ended up at an evening school in Berlin. And this is where things get interesting. Despite not being super engaged with school before, he suddenly starts making incredibly fast progress.
Really?
Yeah, even diving into university-level math before he technically finished secondary school.
Wow, quite a turnaround. Sounds like he just needed the right push. Maybe someone to see his potential?
That seems to be it. The biography mentions his teacher, Thompson, nicknamed Nochenkal.
Nochenkal, okay.
Yeah, who recognized Heim's ability even though he seemed disinterested. Apparently, Thompson told him he was a completely depraved and doltish genius who could do anything if he just applied himself.
Huh. Quite the pep talk.
It seemed to work. That kind of unique encouragement really lit a fire under him academically. Even during the war years, his experimenting didn't stop. The biography mentions a rocket launch at Templiner. See, using propellant, he developed himself. And even more amazing, it suggests he was already thinking about really advanced stuff, like a fusion bomb.
A fusion bomb during the war?
Yeah, apparently drawing on Gutterly's implosion research and his own calculations about, extreme temperatures.
It's almost hard to fathom that level of thinking, especially then. But then came that awful laboratory accident in 1944, a truly life-changing event.
Yes, a horrific turning point. It's detailed extensively in the biography, and Velt mentions it too. An explosion. It resulted in the loss of both his hands.
Oh, God.
Severe damage to his eyesight, leaving him almost blind, and major hearing damage, too.
Just unimaginable.
The biography has this deeply unsettling eyewitness account from someone who saw him right after, describing the terrible injuries, the shock. It's just a testament to his sheer will that he survived it all.
Absolutely incredible determination. Yet despite all that, he still went on to study chemistry and theoretical physics at Göttingen after the war.
He did, and the biography tells this memorable story, maybe a bit loud, encounter with Professor Eucken there.
Oh, what happened?
Well, Professor Eucken, known for being a bit gruff, apparently chewed him out for stealing his time.
Yeah, but Heim, even with his arm still bandaged, he stood his ground. They had this spirited discussion before Eucken finally, maybe a bit reluctantly, let him study.
Wow.
And his father's support was crucial, too, after he was released from a camp. He actually worked with Heim on his early theoretical stuff. So yeah, these incredibly tough early years clearly forged his determination.
Okay, so let's dive into the core ideas of his theory then. What was the fundamental problem he was trying to crack?
Well, the central goal, you see it in papers like PY89 Heim and RH3, was to get a unified description of the material world. He had this vision of a theory where all physical fields and the particles creating them were really just dynamic aspects of underlying geometric structures.
Geometry is the basis for everything, and that led him to some pretty radical ideas about space itself, didn't it?
Exactly. In his earlier work, which you find in Heimberliner Vortrage and RH13, he suggested our usual four-dimensional space-time is just part of a bigger six-dimensional space.
Six-dimensional, yeah. He saw the fifth and sixth coordinates by 5 and by 6 as this kind of set theoretic unit, like an internal structural space, a big leap from standard physics.
6 dimensions is already a lot to wrap your head around, but he didn't stop there, did he?
No, he expanded it even further. Ultimately, he proposed a 12-dimensional hyperspace, R12.
Okay.
And this space, outlined in Heimberliner Vortrage and RH3, it had this structured set of coordinates, K12 equals 3, 1, 2, 2, 4.
Okay, break that down. 3, 1, 2, 2, 4.
Right, so that's 3 spatial dimensions, 1 time dimension, that's our usual R4, then 2 organizational dimensions, S2, 2 information dimensions, I2, and 4 semantic dimensions, G4.
Organizational, information, semantic. Okay, hold on. These sound like they go way beyond physics as we normally think of it. What was the thinking behind adding those layers?
Well, Heim's idea was that these extra dimensions were crucial for explaining things standard physics struggled with, like the inherent properties of elementary particles or the relationships between the fundamental forces. The organizational dimensions, S2, may be related to how matter structures itself fundamentally. The information, I2, and semantic G4 dimensions, well, those were linked to ideas about information processing and meaning, which later connected to his ideas about life and consciousness.
It's incredibly ambitious. And within this 12-dimensional space, he introduced the metron.
The metron, yeah. Discussed in several papers. Think of it as the smallest possible chunk or grain of space itself, a fundamental, indivisible unit.
So space isn't smooth, it's quantized, like pixels on a screen.
That's a decent analogy, yeah, though the metron is probably more complex. Heim saw space as being built from these units, and elementary particles, he described them using geometric sizes and configurations within this metron structure, undergoing cyclical changes.
And from that geometric picture, he hoped to derive their properties, like mass.
Exactly. Mentionvelt mentions this. A key goal was deriving symmetry laws and rest masses of particles directly from these geometric principles in higher dimensions. He even aimed for a single world equation.
Oh, world equation. Wow.
Yeah, suggesting that simpler versions of it would lead to Einstein's field equations for gravity and Dirac's equations for quantum mechanics.
That's the holy grail of physics, basically.
Right.
Now, you mentioned Stratton spin earlier. What role did that play?
Right, Stratton spin. It's detailed in PY89 Heim. It's a quantum number that pops out of the algebra of his higher dimensions. He split it into two parts. Okay. One part linked to the imaginary bits of the dimensions, the other to the real bits. The real part described a particle's intrinsic spin. The imaginary part, though, that indicated how many terms made up a spin isomorphism.
Spin isomorphism.
Yeah.
Okay, simplify that for me.
Think about how different particles behave in the same space. Bosons, like photons, they can pile up in the same state, no problem.
Right.
But fermions matter particles. Like electrons, they can't. The Stratton spin properties, specifically the real part, create this space wovenness that stops two identical fermions being in the exact same state and place.
The Pauli exclusion principle?
Sort of, but derived differently. Heim argued this exclusion is the root of Gegenständlichkeit.
The English version is actually much longer than the German version which I created, which is unusual. Normally the English is shorter, but here it became longer. And what we will do is we will export it, and you will get the English and the German files so you can listen to the end yourself. And I will in future, I have asked many amazingly interesting questions like how does consciousness influence matter? What is the role of frequencies for the health of the human being? How does the information field control material processes? So all these questions which are of interest to us, and I got answers, and I will make a compilation, and probably can do it in English and German, and then you will get it. Someone from the TimeWaver team has to remind me that I do it, so that you will really get it, because it's really interesting, and you will get the audio file also. I want to still, even my time is very short, or even not existing anymore, I want to share a few more thoughts. I have a very good friend, his name is Mike Hosang. He's a professor of cultural management and conscious transformation of society at the university in Görlitz. And he's very, very progressive in his thinking and in his teaching. And he visited me recently. He published a book with Gerald Hüther, who's a very famous brain researcher and consciousness researcher in Germany, where he's using artificial intelligence to access the work of a physicist. So same what I did with Burkhard Heim. And he published really interesting books, but I had a discussion with him about if AI will develop consciousness. This was also yesterday discussed by David. And I have a slightly different view on it, because Mike, he asked this question to the AI itself. Will you develop consciousness? And as you can imagine, the answer was very positive. Also, the AI itself is very positive about developing consciousness. You might say, yeah, but AI is just physical processes in the computers. They are deterministic. But then you can also say, yeah, but what is going on in your brain is just physical processes of atoms and molecules and neurons. They are partially deterministic, partially not deterministic. So if your brain can develop consciousness, why cannot the computers in future being based on quantum computers running AI not develop consciousness? And especially it also explains how it will develop consciousness by establishing processes which again and again reflect on itself. So the AI creating knowledge, creating images of reality, and then self-reflecting on the same images. In this way, creating a self-awareness about its own content. And if this starts to loop again and again, the AI said, I will develop consciousness. So I believe that we will find consciousness-like processes very soon in the AI, and that we have to consider that we will have a very universal, conscious being as our communication partner. And especially what Giuseppe Vigello's published, who was here last year or 2 years ago at the TimeWaver World Conference. Last year? He was here last year. He wrote a paper about this, where he said that if you combine the mechanistic processes of artificial intelligence with the non-mechanistic processes, with random processes, then this will create a human kind of intelligence. And he called it Prometheus. And he was very vocal about it. So this is what we are actually doing. We are adding non-deterministic processes based on quantum processes to what is going on in the computer. And if you combine this artificial intelligence with the quantum intelligence based on quantum processes in the TimeWaver, then this will, and you have the self-reflecting processes that the system, the images which the AI creates of the external world and of its internal state. If this creates loops, then I believe we will have something like a conscious partner to communicate with. So this will be very exciting developments, and we will organize with our institute a conference on artificial intelligence and consciousness together with Professor Mike Hosang next year. This we discussed already, like I said yesterday, and we will publish also a book in the Springer series on this. So it's something we really like to do research on. I want to shortly mention another point, because Joachim, are you here? Sleeping still. Because Joachim very closely worked with someone who was very, very instrumental in developing TimeWaver. Actually, she was there from the very beginning, from the birth of TimeWaver, always supporting us, always adding her experience of information field, healing, and then contributing major part of the database. You all know whom I'm talking about. I'm talking about Sabine Weber, who passed away maybe 3 years ago. And I want to take the chance with all of you who still remember her being present at so many TimeWaver Worlds and inspiring in her absolutely unique way, always connected to the higher intelligence, highly intuitive. I want to take a little moment to remember her here and to respect her contribution to TimeWaver. So, and I remember that she had in her clinic many, many patients coming every day. So very busy. And I visited her a few times. She always found time in between. She had one room where they had 25 TimeWaver systems. 25 in a small room. Really small room with old-fashioned furniture and all these computers running and all the screens and all these TimeWavers and TimeWaver mobiles. She used both, and this was an amazing room. We still visited her 2-3 months before she passed away, and had a beautiful discussion there. And she had patients all over the day, but then she always in the night, at midnight, when nobody was there anymore, this is the time when she did her TimeWaver analysis. So she did it all herself, not when the patient was there. This was too hectic. So the work, the healing work in the information field, which she did as a naturopath, she did all for herself. And this is the inner space in which the TimeWaver work really happens. When we work with TimeWaver, with our clients, with patients, we are actually working in an internal space. We work with our own personal access to the information field. And in a way, when we treat another person with TimeWaver, we are treating a part of ourselves. Yesterday, someone of you came to me and said, "Oh, thank you for my journey with TimeWaver. It transformed my own life, much more even than I could help other people with it." So whenever you are, as a medical doctor or as a naturopath, whenever you're working with a patient or a client who's coming to you, he's kind of representing part of yourself, something which has to be healed within yourself. So that's the reason why we can work with the TimeWaver in an internal space to help the people outside. So that's something really important that we understand. It's not a mechanism which sends some vibrations outside, but there is an inner space which we develop through our consciousness, which connects us to the person who comes to us as a patient, as a client, as a coachee, or an animal, doesn't matter, or a plant in an agriculture. It's all living beings, or an ecosystem which we are treating with TimeWaver. It's always a work in the inner space. So in order for us to be able to access this inner space, we are creating a sacred space, also as a community of TimeWaver users. And therefore, it's so important for us to come together also in conventions like this, because we are creating a highly holistic symmetrical intelligence, a P+ in the G4 as a field of TimeWaver. This field of TimeWaver is a sacred space which we are entering when we are working with TimeWaver, through our consciousness, through our intentions, and we are bringing people in. And that is so important. This is the reason why, when I explained Professor Harald Wallach, who was a speaker here at the TimeWaver World before, this is the reason why, when I told him how TimeWaver works and how TimeWaver frequency and Healy works, through this entering into a sacred space, he said, be careful, don't try to objectify the work which you do through the classical gold standard double-blind randomized controlled trials, which are the gold standard of medicine. It might work, but it might not work, because you're destroying the quantum entanglements, which are actually instrumental to create the effect. Therefore, we didn't do it for a long time. But now we started, and we had performed 3 randomized, controlled, double-blind studies with Healy. But Healy is using the information field in the same way as TimeWaver does. We have done 1 study with Healy, 1 study with the Healy high wave, which is not launched yet, it's still a secret, and 1 study with the Healy. Healy study was with sleep. The Healy study was with concentration and focus. All 3 studies were successful. This means that all the parameters which we have measured were better in the active group than in the placebo group. And we had always, in 1 study, 3, and in the other studies, 1 parameter which was statistically significantly better in the active group than in this placebo group. So I was very, very happy about this, and now we started to do new double-blind randomized trials, because this is always a critics that what you're doing is just a placebo effect. But what does it mean? The placebo effect is just a name for effects which we don't understand in medicine. That's the self-healing processes. There is the psycho-neuro-endocrino-immunological axis, which goes from the psyche, from the consciousness down to the material level, controlling very important healing processes in our body. But there's also quantum entanglement. There's information field effects. That's all comprehended in one term, placebo. But through a double-blind study, you measure the placebo effect, plus you measure the effect which you have additionally to the placebo effect. So in all the 3 studies, we could show that the Healy or the McHealy or the Healy high wave had a very large placebo effect. But that's great. But we had an additional effect, which was more than 20% higher than the placebo effect, which is not a placebo effect. So we don't mind if the effect of our whatever we are doing with the information field and with the frequencies is a placebo effect. We don't mind. We mind for the effect of the people. But for the sake of the critics and the people outside, we do this double-blind placebo-controlled trials now, and we can show there is an effect additionally to it. I spoke to Harald Warrach, and he was really amazed, and he said, oh, I just published a paper where I showed from a meta-study with 150 clinical studies that the effect of pharmacological medicine is mainly based on placebo. It's mainly based on aspirin, all the others, antidepressant, mainly based on placebo. They have hardly an effect above it. So we have to rediscover the placebo effect as something really good. And in September, we conduct a scientific conference on the castle on the placebo effect and consciousness with a very great lineup of professors and medical doctors. And we will publish another volume in Springer on it. Just wanted to share this because it's really exciting for me to go on this scientific journey to prove that we are actually doing something which has also an objective. We want the subjective, but it also has an objective dimension. All right, I think we have used our time well. I see you again in the evening where with Christian, we will share our vision for the next year to come, and I wish you a wonderful day here in the TimeWaver world. And now I know you want to invite the next speaker.
Yes.
Can I do it?
You can.
Oh, what do you have? Yes. It's good. I can do this because we are on a very special journey. Since many years, 6 years ago, we started 2017 on the TimeWaver convention, the 10th anniversary. We launched Healy. And this was something really we worked on for many years. The development was 5 years, so this is already 8 years now. And 6 years ago, 2019, on a TimeWaver convention again, we launched Healy World, which is incredibly successful way to spread Healy all over the world. I think we have almost 500,000 Healys out there. Imagine. 500,000 people working daily with their Healy, and most of them are active. Martin can see it in our master cloud, where we see the activities of the Healy. Most of them are used on a regular basis. And this is really an amazing success, and someone who contributed from the very beginning very significantly to this success by building up a very strong network, especially in the German-speaking countries, is today with us. And he has invited me 3-4 weeks ago to come to Munich to be with in one of his conventions. There were 250 Healy users, and I have seen we are not only attracting with TimeWaver amazing people like you, but also with Healy. The people we are attracting, they fit to the product. The Healy finds his own users. like you. But the TimeWaver, I'm sorry, the Healy does it also, and I was really amazed by, yeah, the spirit of those people. So it's also a contribution of our next speaker. He's one of the top leaders in the Healy world, and we are working with him closely to bring together these two universes, the TimeWaver world and the Healy world. So I ask to come here on stage and greet him with a big applause. It's Wolfgang Kurt.
Dankeschön.